One day when I was 12, I was home alone with my little brother who was 4 at the time. I was watching TV when I heard knocks at the front door. My little brother was sleeping in his room. My mom told me not to answer the door, so I just ignored it. The knock stopped after a few minutes, so I thought the person had left. About an hour later, someone knocked on the door again. Once again, I just ignored it. Then I heard something that still scares me today. "I know you're alone, little boy, and I'm gonna kill you." Immediately, I ran to the phone and called 911. The police were on their way, but I knew that the man had enough time to break down the door and kill me and my little brother before the police arrived. So I screamed, "I called 911 and the police are on their way." Then I picked up a kitchen knife and stood in the living room until the police arrived. The man never got caught, and after a few months we moved to Florida, and I still didn't tell my little brother about this. He is 13 now. This encounter happened about 2 months ago and still freaks me out. As a 20-year-old female, I often find myself staying at my boyfriend's apartment overnight. My boyfriend is 23 years old, and his mom moved in with him about 6 months ago because she lost her job and needed support. Oftentimes my boyfriend's mom would stay out very late and comes home early in the morning. She'll come through the door sometimes about 5 a.m., and Ryan usually gets up and let her inside because she either leaves her key or cannot find it. My boyfriend has 3 locks on the door, and sometimes we leave all 3 of them unlocked, so we don't have to get up and let her in. I know this is a huge mistake, but it's something that we've done in the past. This particular night, I passed out about 11, and Ryan went to bed about 1 a.m. I'm a very light sleeper, so I wake up to just about anything, and I found myself being awoke at about 3 a.m. to knocking, but it promptly stopped, and I thought it was probably his cat making noise. His apartment is very small, so his front door is only about 6 steps from his bedroom door. Anyway, I didn't think much of it, and rolled back into my boyfriend's arms and fell asleep. Around 4:30, I heard stomping up the stairs and the front door being opened, but it was caught by the chain lock. This happened before, and his mom screams out his name, and he'll get up and open the door for her, but she didn't scream out his name this time, which was really odd to me. Regardless, I got up to answer the door. I made my way to the door and was greeted by 2 men that I've never seen before, staring back at me through the crack with a hand on the inside, fiddling with the chain lock. I screamed and slammed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. My boyfriend came out of the room running, wondering what was going on. I explained the best I could and called the cops soon after. They showed up about 20 minutes later, but the guys weren't there anymore. The cops checked our back deck and found hand and footprints in the snow from someone climbing up the back of it. I still have no idea who these guys were, but I often wonder if his mom had any part in it. His mom often hangs around sketchy people, and not too long ago had some guy say he'd send a gang after her for breaking up with him. Nothing has happened since, but every night we make sure everything is locked before we sleep. In the earliest months of 2014, I started dating my current boyfriend. We hit it off immediately, which resulted in me staying at his house multiple nights out of the week. Eventually, I ended up living there, sharing a mobile home with him and his father. The neighborhood itself was fairly creepy. Richard, my boyfriend's dad, would tell me stories about how the entire street was owned by one man, a guy who had gotten old and in recent years let his land go. As a result, the field beside our mobile home was overgrown with weeds and old trees. He also told me about some strange occurrences, of which he attributed to 2 things: aliens and kids from another neighborhood. Despite his warnings and how creepy the area was, I didn't take him too seriously. After all, his biggest concern was aliens. I was unemployed for a short period of time after moving in, which left me alone in the house while Cody, my boyfriend, and his dad worked. I spent most of my days putting in job applications and cleaning up the house and reading online. I guess you could say that my presence at the house was pretty predictable, which is the only explanation of this occurrence. On a day as unremarkable as any, while I sat reading a book in our bedroom, I heard a car pull in the driveway. The sound was pretty distinctive, considering this area wasn't paved, but rather made up of gravel. Thinking that Cody had come home early from work, I slipped my shoes on and started for the front door, which was on the other side of the house. Before I could reach it, a knock sounded against the glass. The front of our trailer had a sunroom, basically a front porch that was encased with windows, making it so you had to go through the 2 doors before stepping into the living room. Being as paranoid as he was, Richard would usually lock the sunroom door before leaving for work, unless he was in a huge hurry. Still thinking that maybe my boyfriend had come home from work early, I opened the first door to let him in, only it wasn't Cody at the door, but rather a short Hispanic man. He smiled at me through the glass and nodded, almost as if he was expecting me to be the one who answered. I noticed that he had one hand behind his back, the other was hanging at his side. I tried not to think much about it. Behind him in our carport was a small white truck, and I could hear that the engine was still running. "Can I help you?" I tried to make my voice sound as strong as I could, but it only came out shaky. "I'm with the garbage company. I'm here to pick up your trash cans." I blinked, knowing immediately that this was a lie. It was common for the garbage company to come up and pick our trash cans if the bill hadn't been paid. But I had gone with Cody the week before to pay it. Not to mention, the drivers never knocked on the door. They only took the trash cans and left. I glanced to my left, seeing that our trash cans were still there where we always kept them, on the outside of the sunroom, somewhat behind the house. "They're right there if you need them, then take them." This time my voice was more assertive, causing my visitor's smile to turn into a frown. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't verbally answer, I just shook my head. My heart dropped as I watched him reach up and grab the handle to the glass door, pulling on it to open it. The door clicked because it was obviously locked. The man tried to pull it again, this time harder, causing the metal to creak. I jumped back into the house and slammed the front door, and locking it with a purpose. It was so quiet in the house that I only noticed two sounds: my heart pounding and the doorknob to our back door jingling. There's no way it could have been the guy at the front porch. He wouldn't have had time to get back there, even if he ran. "I'm calling the police," I yelled through the door, still baffled at the fact that all this had been happening in the broad daylight. I could hear the truck drive through the carport and into our backyard immediately after that. It took a moment to look through the blinds of the window, watching as a separate man jumped off the back porch and into the passenger seat. To this day, I'm convinced that these three men knew I was home alone and carefully planned an attack. One of them was meant to distract me while the other broke into the back door. I still don't know what the guy at the front door had hidden behind his back. All I can say is I'm forever thankful about how paranoid my father-in-law is. Who knows what would have happened if he didn't lock the sunroom door. About 2 years ago on Halloween, my friends got a party bus. I really wanted to hand out candy to the kids. This had nothing to do with the story, but where I'd grown up, we lived way out in the country and never got trick-or-treaters. Because I was handing out candy, I didn't meet up at my friend's house. I went to the bar they were at and got on the bus there. We go from bar to bar for a while until closing time, and my friend says I can get a ride back to her house, spend the night, and she'll take me to my car in the morning. But I had only had one beer several hours ago and knew that I was okay to drive, and the bar where we were at was only about 5 blocks away from my car, so I decided to hoof it on my own. Something I normally never do, but I felt pretty brave in my superhero costume. I headed off on my own as she stepped onto the bus and she called out for me to watch for weirdos. I laughed and kept going on as the blocks passed, and I realized that the street that I was on, that once was crowded with people in costumes, was now completely empty. I pulled my cloak tighter around me and started moving a little faster. It was very well lit with street lamps, and I was passing a bright Family Dollar sign when I saw it. It was a clown, down at the end of the block heading towards me. We were definitely going to pass each other unless I wanted to cross the street and then cross back again, because my car was right around the corner. It was late and Halloween, so I figured whatever and kept going. The clown, however, sees that there's no one around, and that I'm a girl, so he starts laughing in an evil clown style and dancing towards me. But I'm stubborn. I've decided to stay on the closest path to my car, and that's it. He gets closer, and I'm a little more nervous, but I remind myself that this is not a horror movie. He finally reaches me and stays in my path. I stop and stare him down. He laughs again and twirls around me in a little dance and then keeps going. I kept an eye on him, but he just kept drunkenly dancing and laughing as I got to my car and drove away. That's as close to being in a horror movie setting as I ever want to be. This happened about a year ago in Seattle. I was managing a coffee shop down the road from my apartment, an easy 15-minute walk most mornings, which I appreciate since I like to sleep in as much as I can. I had done this walk many times, leave at 5:45 and get to the cafe at 6 a.m., but what happened this morning would shake my comfort about early mornings, my neighborhood, and my city. Because I would sleep in so close to when I had to leave, the walk to work would usually be the thing that would wake me up. I stepped off the steps to my apartment building and maybe took 5 steps before feeling extremely uncomfortable. A man had just crossed the street and was walking towards me. Something in my body told me not to make eye contact with him, but just as passing, I couldn't resist and looked into his eyes. His eyes were piercing and my heart started to race. To the best of my abilities to describe him, he was at least 6 feet, wearing an all-black hoodie pulled over his head. But his eyes are what haunts me to this day. I wasn't sure if he was African American because his skin was black, almost as if he had painted black onto his face. With that one glance, I knew something was wrong. I walked quickly and crossed the street to the other side. I glanced back, and he was standing at the foot of the stairs of my apartment building. Certainly, he had seen me come out of there. At this point, I was about a block away from him, hiding behind a tree in a doorway of another apartment building, calling my boyfriend over and over. I watched as he looked at my apartment building for what felt like a minute and proceeded down the sidewalk of the opposite way I was walking. I was thinking about all the things I would have done, running to the police station that was certainly more than 2 blocks away, calling the security guard I knew was working in the building that I worked. I continued to walk down the block, but I felt the urge to take a glance behind me again, and thankfully I did. I couldn't see the man walking on the block he surely would have still been on. I wasn't sure what to make of it until I saw him, on the same block as me, across the street, coming closer. I started to run, and he matched my pace. I ran the 2 blocks to the police station, and he was gone. I went in and made a report, and then called the owner of the cafe to come and get me. It took a while before I felt comfortable walking to work alone. Even alone, I couldn't listen to my music or anything. Always aware of my surroundings. Thankfully, I've never had another encounter with this man.